I was carrying the laundry basket down the hallway when the sound of splintering wood exploded through the house. Before I could drop the basket, before I could even turn my head, a guttural snarl ripped through the darkness. Raw, primal, nothing like any sound I'd ever heard Lois make in 8 years. Then a scream. Not Shelley's scream, a man's scream. I didn't hear the door break. I didn't hear him enter. What I heard was the sound of my dog becoming something I didn't recognize, and the scream of a man who'd made the last mistake of his life. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Hit the subscribe button and ready to enjoy this story. Because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you, and I don't want you to miss it for anything. My heart seized as I dropped everything and sprinted toward the living room, my bare feet slapping against cold tile. The scene that greeted me made my blood turn to ice. A masked figure in black stumbling backward, his left forearm locked between the jaws of our German shepherd, blood streaking across our cream-colored carpet. Lois's entire body was coiled muscle and fury, her teeth buried deep, her eyes wild with something I'd never seen in her before. The intruder swung his free arm, and I watched in horror as his fist connected with Lois's skull with a sickening thud. She yelped but held on. He slammed her into the wall, once, twice, and I heard the crack of ribs breaking. Still, she didn't let go. "Lois! No!" I didn't even recognize my own voice. I grabbed the first thing I could reach, a ceramic lamp from the side table, and swung it at the man's head. He staggered, kicked Lois hard in the side with his boot, and she finally released him. He fled through the shattered back door, leaving a trail of blood and the acrid smell of sweat and fear. The silence that followed was worse than the chaos. Then I heard it, a soft, wet whimper. Lois lay on her side near the hallway, her breathing shallow and uneven, her ribs rising at an odd angle. Dark blood matted the fur on her flank. From Ellen's bedroom, I could hear my 7-year-old daughter sobbing behind the locked door. "Daddy? Daddy, is he gone?" I knelt beside Lois, my hands shaking as I touched her neck. Her eyes found mine, clouded with pain but still alert, still focused. I wanted to see relief in those eyes, gratitude, the bond we'd built over 8 years of mornings and evenings and quiet trust. But what I saw instead was desperation, anxiety, almost like she was trying to tell me something I couldn't understand. "Shh, girl, you're okay. You're okay," I whispered, though I knew it was a lie. Shelley rushed past me to unlock Ellen's door, and our daughter ran out, dropping to her knees beside the dog she'd grown up with. The dog who slept outside her bedroom door every single night. The dog who'd been nothing but gentle since the day we brought her home from that rescue shelter. "Lois, please don't die," Ellen sobbed into the dog's fur. "Please, please, please." But all I could think about was the violence I'd just witnessed, the blood, the snarling, the way Lois had latched onto that man's arm like she'd been trained to kill. We'd adopted her to make the family feel safer. Now I wasn't sure what we'd brought into our home. By the time we got Lois to the emergency vet at 2 a.m, the questions had already started. "Has the dog shown any aggressive behavior before this incident?" the intake nurse asked, typing notes without looking up. "No, never. Has she been trained in protection work? Schutzhund? Any bite training?" "What? No, she's a rescue. We got her when she was..." "We're required to report animal attacks to animal control, Mr. Gilbert, even in home invasion situations." The nurse finally looked at me, her expression neutral but firm. especially when there's this level of injury involved. Injury to the intruder, I said, hearing my voice rise. He broke into our house. Our daughter was there. I understand. But the law requires documentation when a domestic animal causes serious bodily harm to a human being, regardless of circumstances. The words hit me like a slap. Serious bodily harm to a human being. They took Lois back into surgery. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, possible spinal trauma from being slammed into the wall. Shelley sat beside me in the waiting room, her face pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "They're going to take her, aren't they?" she whispered. I didn't answer because I didn't know. All I knew was that the dog who'd been part of our family for 8 years, who'd never so much as growled at a stranger, had just mauled a man badly enough that he'd fled bleeding into the night. What if he came back? What if he pressed charges? What if animal control decided Lois was dangerous? What if Ellen had been in that hallway instead of locked in her room? The thought made my stomach turn. At 4:47 a.m., a vet tech came out to update us. Lois was stable but critical. They were keeping her sedated. We could see her in the morning. We drove home as the sun was beginning to rise. The house still and cold and wrong. Crime scene tape crossed the back door. A police detective had taken our statements, photographed the blood on the carpet, collected the broken lamp as evidence. Ellen had finally fallen asleep on the couch, curled up under Shelley's jacket. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the dark smear on the tile where Lois had fallen, and felt the weight of a question I'd never imagined I'd have to ask. If protecting my daughter means keeping a dangerous animal in my home, what kind of father does that make me? I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the intruder's arm locked in Lois's jaws. I saw her eyes afterward, not the calm, gentle eyes I knew, but something desperate and wild. By 7 a.m., I'd made my decision. When Ellen woke up, I told her Lois was going to be okay, that the doctors were taking good care of her. I didn't tell her about the animal control investigation. I didn't tell her that the vet had called with more questions about Lois's history, her temperament, whether we'd ever seen warning signs. I didn't tell her that I'd started researching what happens to dogs classified as dangerous. Shelley found me in the garage that afternoon, scrolling through my phone. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. "Reading the municipal code. If animal control decides Lois is a threat, they can remove her from the home. Pending a hearing, and if the hearing goes badly..." I didn't finish the sentence. Euthanasia. The word sat between us like poison. "Lester, she saved us," Shelley said, her voice cracking. "That man had a weapon. He could have..." "I know what he could have done," I snapped. Then softer. "I know. But what if we're wrong? What if we only saw part of what happened? What if Lois? What if something's wrong with her and we didn't see it?" Shelley stared at me like I'd struck her. Then she turned and walked back into the house. That night, Ellen refused to eat dinner. She sat at the table, arms crossed, glaring at me. "You don't love Lois anymore," she said. "That's not true, sweetheart." "Then why aren't you fighting for her?" I had no answer. The next morning, I got the call I'd been dreading. "Mr. Gilbert, this is Officer Vanessa Reyes with Animal Control. We need to schedule a home inspection and interview regarding the incident involving your German Shepherd. We've also issued a temporary hold pending our investigation." "What does that mean?" "It means Lois cannot return to your residence until we've completed our assessment. If our findings indicate she poses a danger to public safety, We'll proceed with a formal dangerous dog hearing. My throat went dry. And if you decide she's dangerous? Mandatory removal from the home, possible behavioral rehabilitation, in severe cases, euthanasia. The line went quiet. Mr. Gilbert, do you understand? Yes, I managed. I understand. I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes after that call, staring at nothing. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a neighbor across the street, Robin Chin. Lester, I have security footage from that night. You need to see this. Can I come over? My hands were shaking as I typed back, yes, now. Robin arrived 15 minutes later with her laptop. She set it on our kitchen table, and Shelley and I leaned in as she pulled up the video file. The timestamp read 12:11 a.m., the night of the break-in. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. It showed our backyard, the back door, and then a figure in a mask, prying at the door with a crowbar. The door gave way. He stepped inside. 3 seconds later, the camera's audio picked up Ellen's scream from somewhere inside the house. And then Lois appeared in the frame, not attacking, not lunging, but placing herself between the intruder and the hallway that led to Ellen's bedroom. She didn't move until he raised his arm. The weapon in his hand glinted under the porch light, something metal, something sharp. He stepped toward the hallway. That's when Lois attacked. The video ended. I sat back, my chest tight, my vision blurring. Oh my God, Shelley whispered. She wasn't attacking him. She was stopping him. Robin nodded. Every injury she took, Lester, she took it to keep him away from Ellen. I covered my face with my hands, and for the first time since that night, I let myself break. Lois hadn't gone rabid. She hadn't snapped. She'd done exactly what she was supposed to do. And I'd been ready to let them take her away. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? Shelley called after me. The vet, I need to see her. Lester, they said no visitors until... I don't care what they said. I drove 15 miles over the speed limit, my mind racing. I had to tell someone. I had to show them the footage. I had to fix this before it was too late. When I arrived at the clinic, the receptionist tried to stop me, but I pushed past her and found the recovery ward. Lois was in the third kennel, lying on a padded mat, her side wrapped in bandages, an IV line running into her leg. Her eyes opened when she heard my footsteps, and when she saw me, she tried to lift her head. I dropped to my knees in front of the kennel, my hands gripping the metal bars. I'm so sorry, girl, I choked out. I'm so sorry. You saved her. You saved Ellen. And I didn't see it. Lois's tail thumped weakly against the mat. I'm going to fix this, I promised. I swear to you, I'm going to fix this. But even as I made that promise, I realized I didn't know if I could keep it. Because the truth was, I'd never wanted a guard dog in the first place. My brother Marcus died when I was 19. Wrong place, wrong time. Caught in the crossfire of a gang dispute 3 blocks from our mother's house. The detective said he probably didn't even see it coming. 1 minute he was walking home from his shift at the grocery store, the next he was gone. What stayed with me wasn't just the grief, it was the violence of it, the randomness, the way aggression, human or animal, could erupt without warning and destroy everything in its path. So when Shelley first brought up getting a dog 6 years ago, my answer was immediate, no. Not a guard dog, she'd said carefully. We were sitting at the kitchen table, Ellen coloring between us, barely 2 years old. Just something that would make me feel safer when you're working late, a presence in the house. Dogs can be unpredictable, Shell. So can people. That's the whole point. I'd looked at Ellen, her little fingers gripping a purple crayon, completely oblivious to the conversation happening over her head. And I'd seen Marcus in my mind, young, smiling, alive one moment and gone the next. I don't want violence in this house, I'd said. Not any kind. Shelley had reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Neither do I, but the world doesn't care what we want, Lester. She wore me down over the next year. Articles about home security, statistics about burglaries in Los Angeles. Gentle reminders that Ellen was getting older, that our neighborhood was changing, that we couldn't protect her from everything, but we could try. Finally, I agreed, but I had conditions. A rescue dog, not a trained attack animal. Something gentle. Something safe. We found Lois at a shelter on the outskirts of the city on a Saturday morning in late September. The building smelled like disinfectant and wet fur, and the sound of barking echoed off concrete walls. The volunteer, a tired-looking woman named Angela, led us past rows of kennels filled with dogs of every size and breed. Lois was in the last kennel on the left, pressed into the far corner, her body low and tense. She came from a junkyard, Angela explained. Owner kept her chained up for 3 years. When he got arrested for theft, she was confiscated. She's been here 4 months. 4 months? Shelley knelt by the kennel door. Why hasn't anyone adopted her? Angela's expression softened. She doesn't show well. Doesn't come to the front of the kennel, doesn't wag her tail. People want dogs that are excited to see them. I watched Lois watching us, dark eyes cautious, ears slightly back, every muscle ready to retreat further if we got too close. Has she been aggressive? I asked. Never, just scared. Shelley looked up at me, and I saw the decision already made in her eyes. Can we meet her? She asked. In the small outdoor yard, Lois stayed near the fence, her head low. Ellen toddled toward her with the fearlessness only a 3-year-old possesses, and I moved to intercept. Wait, Angela said quietly. Ellen reached out her small hand and touched Lois's head. The dog flinched but didn't move away. Ellen giggled and patted her again. Soft doggy. And for the first time, Lois's tail moved. Just once. A tiny, tentative wag. We brought her home that afternoon. The first week, Lois barely moved from the corner of the living room. She ate her food only when we left the room. She wouldn't take treats from our hands. But she watched Ellen, constantly. When Ellen played with her toys, Lois watched. When Ellen ate her meals, Lois watched from beneath the table. And when we put Ellen to bed that first night, Lois followed us down the hallway and lay down outside her bedroom door. Should we move her? Shelley whispered. Let's see what she does, I said. Lois slept there all night, and the next night, and every night after that. The bond formed slowly, then all at once. By the end of the first month, Lois would take treats from Ellen's hand. By the end of the second, she'd rest her head in Ellen's lap during cartoons. By the third month, she'd started meeting Ellen at the window every afternoon when the school bus pulled up. Ellen named her Lois after a character in a book we'd been reading. Because she's strong but doesn't know it yet, Ellen had announced with the absolute certainty of a 4-year-old. The nightmares started around Ellen's 5th birthday. Standard childhood fears, monsters in the closet, shadows on the walls. The first time Ellen cried out in the middle of the night, I was halfway down the hall before I realized Lois had beaten me there. She was sitting beside Ellen's bed, her head resting on the mattress, absolutely still. Ellen's small hand was buried in her fur. Lois says the monsters aren't real, Ellen mumbled sleepily. After that, I stopped worrying. The dog who'd been broken and scared had found something worth protecting. And Ellen had found something I couldn't give her. A guardian who never slept, never wavered, never left her side. I should have seen the pattern. The way Lois always positioned herself between Ellen and strangers at the park. The way she'd stand in doorways when Ellen was in a room, watching the hallway. The way her body would tense whenever someone approached our daughter too quickly. But I'd mistaken vigilance for devotion, protection for proximity. I'd thought we'd rescued Lois. I'd never considered that one day she'd rescue us. And when that day came, I'd been too blind to recognize it for what it was. The emergency veterinary hospital was chaos, even at 2 a.m. A cat yowling in carrier number 3, a Labrador bleeding from a laceration on its hindquarters. And us, Shelley holding Ellen, me carrying Lois wrapped in a blood-stained blanket, her breathing shallow and wet. Dog attack victim, I said to the intake nurse, and the words felt wrong in my mouth even as I said them. She looked up sharply. The dog attacked someone? No, she was attacked. During a home invasion, she protected. I need you to fill out these forms. She slid a clipboard across the counter, her expression unreadable. Examination room 2. They'll take her back immediately. A vet tech appeared and took Lois from my arms. She didn't wake, didn't even whimper. Ellen reached for her, sobbing. Lois! Daddy, don't let them take her. They're helping her. Baby, they're going to help her. But I wasn't sure I believed it. Dr. Patel emerged from the surgical suite 40 minutes later, still wearing blood-spattered scrubs. Her face was grim. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, severe internal bleeding. We've stabilized her, but the next 24 hours are critical. She paused. Mr. Gilbert, I need to ask you some questions for our records. Here it comes, I thought. Was Lois trained in protection work? Any bite training, Schutzhund, personal protection courses? No, she's a rescue. We've had her for 8 years. She's never shown aggression toward anyone. Dr. Patel made a note. And tonight, she attacked an intruder. She defended my daughter. My voice came out harder than I intended. A man broke into our home with a weapon. I understand, but I'm required by law to report any incident where a domestic animal causes injury requiring medical attention to a human being. She looked at me directly. Animal control will be notified. They'll likely want to interview you and inspect your home. The words hit me like cold water. What does that mean for Lois? It means they'll investigate whether she poses a danger to public safety. Depending on their findings, she trailed off. Depending on their findings, what? They could classify her as a dangerous animal, mandatory removal from the home, possible euthanasia. Shelley made a sound like she'd been punched. Ellen pulled away from her mother, her face red and tear-streaked. They can't take Lois. She saved us. Tell them, Daddy. I will, sweetheart. I promise. She's a hero. She's not dangerous. But even as Ellen said it, doubt crept into my mind like poison. I kept seeing the intruder's arm locked in Lois's jaws. The blood, the savage, primal violence of it. Had we missed something? Some sign that the gentle dog sleeping outside Ellen's door every night was capable of that kind of brutality? Dr. Patel's voice softened. You can see her once she's in recovery, but I should warn you, she's heavily sedated. She won't know you're there. They led us into the recovery ward at dawn. Lois lay on her side in a large kennel, her chest wrapped in bandages, an IV line running into her front leg. Her eyes were closed, her breathing assisted by oxygen. Ellen pressed her face against the kennel bars. "Lois, can you hear me?" Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. "Why won't she wake up?" Ellen whispered. "She's resting, baby. Her body needs to heal." But what I thought was, what if she never wakes up? What if we lose her anyway? Not to animal control, but to the injuries she sustained protecting us. And worse, what if keeping her had been the danger all along? What if my fear of violence had blinded me to the violence already living under our roof? Shelley's hand found mine, squeezing hard. "We didn't know," she said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. "We couldn't have known." But I wasn't sure that was true, and I wasn't sure it mattered. We'd been home from the vet for less than an hour when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Robin Chen from across the street, her laptop tucked under one arm, her expression serious. "Lester, I'm so sorry about what happened. Is Lois—" "Critical but stable." The words came out flat, exhausted. Robin nodded, then glanced past me into the house. "Can I come in? There's something you need to see." Shelley joined us at the kitchen table, Ellen asleep on the couch behind us, finally worn out from crying. Robin opened her laptop and pulled up a video file. "My security camera faces the street, but it catches part of your backyard too. I didn't think anything of it until I checked the footage this morning." She turned the screen toward us. "This is from the night of the break-in." The timestamp read 12:11 a.m. The image was grainy, black and white, but clear enough to make out our back door and part of the yard. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then a figure appeared at the edge of the frame, tall, masked, carrying something metallic that caught the porch light, a crowbar. "Oh my God," Shelley breathed. The figure moved to our back door and began prying at the frame. 10 seconds later, the door gave way with a crack we couldn't hear but could see. He stepped inside, weapon still raised. 3 seconds passed. Then Ellen's scream pierced through the audio, distant but unmistakable, and Lois appeared in the doorway. Not attacking, not lunging forward in rage. She positioned herself in the hallway, directly between the intruder and the path to Ellen's bedroom. The intruder took a step toward that hallway. Lois held her ground. He raised his arm higher, and the light caught what he was holding. Not just a crowbar, something sharper, a blade attached to the end. He moved forward again. That's when Lois attacked. She launched herself at his raised arm, the one holding the weapon, and locked her jaws around his forearm. He swung her into the wall. She held on. He kicked her. She held on, until he finally dropped the weapon and I appeared in the frame with the lamp. The video ended. I sat back, my hands shaking, my vision blurring at the edges. "She wasn't attacking him," I whispered. "She was stopping him." Robin nodded. "He was going for Ellen's room. Lois knew it." Shelley covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. I replayed it in my mind, every moment I'd misunderstood. The desperation in Lois's eyes after the attack wasn't confusion or fear. It was urgency. Look what he was going to do. Look what I stopped. Every blow she'd taken, the fist to her skull, the kicks to her ribs, being slammed into the wall hard enough to crack bone. Every single injury had been meant for my daughter. Lois had put her body between that weapon and Ellen. And I'd stood in that vet's office wondering if we'd made a mistake bringing her into our home. "Lester," Shelley's voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" I wasn't. I was the furthest thing from okay. I thought, my voice cracked. I thought she'd snapped. I thought maybe we'd missed something, some sign that she was dangerous. I was ready to. I couldn't finish the sentence. Robin reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. You didn't know. None of us knew. But now you do. I need to get this to animal control, I said, standing abruptly. Right now. Before they make their decision. I already emailed it to you, Robin said, and I'm happy to testify if it comes to that. I looked at the frozen frame on her laptop, Lois mid-leap, protecting the child she loved more than her own life. The guilt didn't just become unbearable, it became everything. The call came Tuesday morning. Mr. Gilbert, this is Officer Vanessa Reyes with Los Angeles Animal Control. We've completed our initial review of the incident involving your German Shepherd. Her voice was professional, detached. We're issuing a temporary custody hold pending a formal dangerous dog hearing. My stomach dropped. We have footage, security camera footage that shows. We've received that evidence and it will be reviewed at the hearing. Until then, your dog cannot return to your residence. She's still at the vet. She almost died protecting my daughter. I understand this is difficult, Mr. Gilbert, but the law requires us to investigate any incident where a domestic animal causes significant injury to a human being, regardless of circumstances. She paused. The hearing is scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. You'll have the opportunity to present your case. If the panel determines the animal poses a danger to public safety, she will be removed permanently. And if you decide she's dangerous? The silence stretched too long. Euthanasia is one possible outcome, yes. 72 hours. That's all we had. I told Shelley in the garage where Ellen couldn't hear. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, her face drained of color, and said, "They can't do this. They can't." But they could. I'd spent the last 2 days reading every municipal code, every statute, every precedent case I could find online. The law was clear. Animal control had broad discretion to classify dogs as dangerous, and once that classification was made, the outcome was almost always the same: removal, relocation, or death. Ellen stopped eating. She'd sit at the table, pushing food around her plate, saying nothing. At night, I'd find her standing in the hallway outside her bedroom, staring at the empty space where Lois used to sleep. "She's coming home, right?" she asked me Wednesday night. "I'm doing everything I can, sweetheart." That's not what I asked. I knelt down to her level, and the look in her 7-year-old eyes broke me. Fear, anger, betrayal. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm trying, Ellen. I promise I'm trying." She turned away without another word. By Thursday, the neighborhood had split into camps. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down stopped Shelley at the mailbox. "I heard what happened. That poor dog. If there's anything we can do." But Mr. Kowalski from the corner confronted me in the driveway. "A dog that vicious shouldn't be in a residential area. What if it had been a kid who wandered into your yard? You think about that? She was protecting my daughter from an armed intruder. Today it's an intruder. Tomorrow it's the mailman. Dogs that attack don't stop, Gilbert." I wanted to hit him. Instead, I walked away. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running the numbers in my head. Legal fees if we fought this. Moving costs if we had to relocate to a county with different laws. The impossibility of explaining to Ellen that sometimes doing the right thing wasn't enough. Shelley found me at 3 a.m., sitting in the dark kitchen. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking I'd trade everything," I said. "The house, my job, everything we have, if it meant Lois could come home." "So would I." We sat in silence, holding hands across the table. waiting for Friday to come. The vet called at dawn. "Lois is awake," Dr. Patel said. "She's asking for you." "Asking for us?" "She won't settle down, keeps trying to stand. I think she knows something's wrong." We were there in 20 minutes. Lois was standing in her kennel, trembling with the effort, her bandaged side heaving. When she saw Ellen, she pressed against the bars and whimpered. Ellen reached through and touched her face. "I won't let them take you, I promise." But promises made by children don't hold up in court, and the hearing was in 8 hours. Dr. Patel led us into the recovery room alone, a small mercy before the hearing that would decide everything. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of a heart monitor and the soft hiss of oxygen. Morning light filtered through a single window, casting pale squares across the tile floor. Lois lay in an oversized kennel in the corner, her chest wrapped in fresh bandages, her breathing steadier than it had been 2 days ago, but still labored. Ellen knelt beside the kennel door without being told. She'd done this every morning since the attack, pressed her small body as close as the bars would allow, as if proximity alone could heal. "Lois," she whispered, "it's me." For a moment, nothing. Then Lois's eyes opened, dark, clouded with pain, but focused, alert. She saw Ellen and something shifted in her expression, not just recognition. Relief. Ellen reached through the bars and rested her hand on Lois's head, her fingers gentle against the bandage covering the gash where the intruder's fist had connected. "You saved us," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "You saved me." Lois struggled to lift her head, just an inch, maybe 2, and touched her nose to Ellen's palm. The effort cost her. I could see it in the way her muscles trembled, the way her breathing quickened. But she held it there, a promise kept without words. Ellen's tears came then, silent and steady. "They want to take you away. They say you're dangerous, but you're not. You're the bravest thing I've ever seen." I stood behind my daughter, my hand on her shoulder, and felt something inside me crack wide open. All the years I'd spent avoiding violence, running from it, trying to build a life where aggression couldn't touch us. And here was proof that sometimes love requires it. Sometimes courage looks like teeth and blood, and standing between what you love and what wants to destroy it. Lois had never barked a warning, never growled at a stranger. For 8 years she'd been nothing but gentle, until gentleness wasn't enough. Shelley moved beside me, her hand finding mine, and we stood together watching our daughter say goodbye to the dog who'd given everything to keep her alive. "I love you," Ellen whispered into Lois's fur. "I love you so much." Lois's tail moved, barely a twitch, but unmistakable, and then her eyes found mine. There was no accusation in that gaze, no judgment for the doubt I'd carried, the questions I'd asked, the guilt that had nearly broken me. Just the same steady devotion I'd seen every day for 8 years. "I would do it again," that look said. "I would take every blow, every broken rib, every moment of pain, for her, always for her." I dropped to my knees beside Ellen, my vision blurring, and pressed my forehead against the kennel bars. "I'm sorry," I choked out. "I'm so sorry I didn't understand." Lois exhaled softly, a sound that might have been forgiveness, might have been exhaustion, might have been both. This was love without language, courage without recognition, protection offered freely, without expectation of reward or even survival. And in 2 hours, we'd have to stand in front of strangers and convince them that this kind of love deserved to live. The animal control hearing room was smaller than I'd imagined, just a conference table, 6 chairs, and fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out and cold. Officer Reyes sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 other officials whose names I'd already forgotten. A court reporter typed silently in the corner. We sat across from them, me, Shelley, and Robin, who'd come to testify about the security footage. Ellen had wanted to come, but I'd convinced her to wait at home with Shelley's sister. Some things children shouldn't have to witness. Officer Reyes opened a manila folder. We're here to determine whether the German Shepherd known as Lois, owned by Lester and Shelley Gilbert, poses a danger to public safety following an incident on the night of January 9th, resulting in significant injury to an individual. She spoke like Lois was a case number, not a living being who'd bled protecting my daughter. Mr. Gilbert, you've submitted security footage and medical records. We've reviewed both. Reyes looked up, her expression unreadable. However, the severity of the injuries sustained by the intruder, lacerations requiring 42 stitches, nerve damage, possible permanent loss of function in his left hand, raises serious concerns about the animal's capacity for violence. He broke into our home with a weapon, I said, hearing my voice rise. He was moving toward my daughter's bedroom. We understand the circumstances, but the law doesn't measure a dog's danger by intent. It measures by capability. The man to her left, Martinez, I think, leaned forward. A dog that can inflict that level of damage once can do it again. To protect her family, yes. Shelley's voice was steady but strained. That's what she did. She protected us. The question isn't whether she was protecting you, Reyes said quietly. It's whether she can be trusted not to attack under different circumstances. A child approaching too quickly, a delivery person at the door. The risk assessment. The door opened. A man in a dark suit entered carrying a briefcase. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years seeing things people shouldn't see. Detective Marcus Hall, LAPD, he said, flashing his badge. Apologies for the interruption. I have information relevant to this case. Reyes frowned. Detective, this is a closed administrative hearing. The intruder from the Gilbert home has been identified. Hall pulled a photograph from his briefcase and placed it on the table. Raymond Voss, 34, arrested yesterday trying to break into another residence 3 miles from the Gilbert home. He laid out more photos, crime scene images, medical reports, a woman's face unsmiling in what looked like a driver's license photo. Voss is linked to 4 previous home invasions in the last 8 months. All followed the same pattern: families with young children, surveillance of the homes for weeks beforehand, entry through rear doors between midnight and 2 a.m. Hall's voice remained flat, professional. The 4th victim, Jennifer Moss, mother of 2, didn't have a dog. The room went silent. She didn't survive, Hall said. Voss is being charged with first-degree murder in addition to the assault charges from the Gilbert incident. I felt Shelley's hand grip mine so tightly her nails bit into my skin. Hall turned to look directly at Officer Reyes. If that dog hadn't intervened when she did, given Voss's pattern and the weapon he was carrying, I don't believe this family would be alive to attend this hearing. No one spoke. The court reporter's fingers hovered motionless over her keyboard. Hall gathered his photos and straightened. I'm not an animal behaviorist. That's your expertise. But I've investigated enough silent crimes to know the difference between an attack and a defense. What happened in that home wasn't aggression. He paused at the door. It was interception. Officer Reyes closed the folder in front of her. We'll need time to review this new evidence. This hearing is continued pending further evaluation. You'll be notified of our decision within 48 hours. It wasn't a victory, but as we walked out into the afternoon sunlight, Shelley squeezed my hand. "It's a chance," she whispered. And for the first time in 5 days, I let myself believe her. The call came Saturday morning. "Mr. Gilbert, this is Officer Reyes." A pause. "The panel has reached a decision. Based on the totality of evidence, including Detective Hall's testimony and the security footage, we've determined that Lois does not meet the criteria for dangerous animal classification." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "She's cleared to return home," Reyes continued. "There will be no restrictions on her custody." Shelley was watching my face from across the kitchen. When I nodded, she collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you. Mr. Gilbert, your dog saved your family. We know that now. I'm sorry it took us this long to see it clearly." By Sunday, the story had broken. I don't know who leaked it. Maybe Detective Hall, maybe someone at Animal Control, maybe Robin posted about it online. But by noon, a news van was parked outside our house. The reporter was young, earnest, carefully coiffed. "Mr. Gilbert, can you tell us about Lois, about what she did?" I almost said no, almost closed the door. But then I thought about the hearing, about how close we'd come to losing her, about all the other dogs who might face the same judgment without evidence to save them. "She put herself between my daughter and a man who'd already killed someone," I said. "She took injuries that were meant for a 7-year-old child, and when it was over, people wanted to punish her for it." The story aired that night on the local news. By Monday morning, it had gone viral. The donations started Tuesday. Small amounts at first, $20, $50, people wanting to help cover Lois's medical bills. Then larger ones. By Wednesday, strangers had contributed over $15,000. "This is insane," Shelley whispered, refreshing the fundraising page for the 10th time. But what broke me were the letters. They arrived in bundles, envelopes addressed to Lois the herodog in children's handwriting, drawings of German shepherds with capes, crayon portraits labeled "bravest dog ever," letters that said things like, "Dear Lois, you are my hero. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. Thank you for saving your family. My dog protects me too. I hope your bones feel better soon. Love, Sophia, age 6. Ellen sat on the floor of Lois's recovery room at the vet, reading every single one aloud. Lois lay in her kennel, bandages being changed daily now, eating solid food again, her dark eyes following Ellen's voice. "Listen to this one, Lois. It's from a kid in San Diego." Ellen held up a drawing of a German shepherd wearing a medal. "You're the best dog in the whole world. Love, Marcus." Lois's tail thumped weakly against the kennel floor. The morning show wanted an interview. The mayor's office sent a commendation letter. A pet food company offered to cover Lois's expenses for life. Strangers stopped us at the grocery store to ask if we were the family with the hero dog. In less than a week, Lois had transformed from a liability the system wanted to eliminate into a symbol of loyalty, courage, the fierce protective love that asked nothing in return. Dr. Patel called Thursday afternoon. "She's ready to come home." We brought Ellen with us this time. When they opened the kennel, Lois stood slowly, favoring her injured side, and took 3 careful steps forward. Ellen dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around the dog's neck. "You're coming home," she whispered. "You're really coming home." Lois pressed her head against Ellen's shoulder and exhaled, a sound of relief so profound it needed no translation. The dog who'd been abandoned, rescued, and nearly destroyed for doing what love required was finally safe. And this time, everyone knew what she was worth. Lois walked through our front door on a Thursday afternoon, moving slowly, her gait uneven from the injuries that would never fully heal. The scar across her ribs was visible even through her fur, a permanent reminder of the night she'd chosen love over safety. Ellen had spent the morning preparing, fresh water bowl, new bed positioned exactly where Lois always slept. A hand-painted welcome home sign taped to the hallway wall with 17 misspelled words and one perfect drawing of a German shepherd with a cape. When Lois stepped inside, she paused, her head lifted, nostrils flaring, taking in the familiar scents. Shelley's cooking, the lavender detergent we used on the curtains, Ellen's strawberry shampoo. Home. "Go ahead, girl," I said softly. "You're safe now." Lois moved through the house like she was memorizing it again. Past the living room where blood had been scrubbed from the carpet, past the kitchen where she'd collapsed that night. Down the hallway toward Ellen's bedroom. She stopped outside the door, the place she'd kept watch for 8 years, and looked back at us. "It's okay," Ellen said, her voice thick. "You can come in now." That night, for the first time since the attack, Lois slept. Not outside Ellen's door on the hard floor, but beside her bed on the new cushion Ellen had picked out, memory foam the clerk had promised, for older dogs with joint pain. Ellen's hand hung over the edge of the mattress, fingers buried in Lois's fur. I stood in the doorway watching them, Shelley beside me. "She's home," Shelley whispered. "Yeah," I said, "she is." But I knew it would take time. Time for Lois's ribs to finish healing. Time for the limp to fade, if it ever did. Time for all of us to stop flinching at unexpected sounds in the night. Physical scars heal faster than the other kind. Later, after Shelley had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room with the lights off. I thought about my brother Marcus, about the violence I'd spent 20 years trying to avoid, about the promise I'd made to myself that aggression would never find a home under my roof. I'd been wrong about so many things. Strength isn't the absence of violence. Sometimes it's the willingness to meet violence head-on when everything you love stands behind you. Courage doesn't announce itself. It doesn't roar or beat its chest or ask for recognition. It just steps forward when stepping forward is the only thing left to do. Lois had understood that in a way I never had. She'd understood it when she was a traumatized rescue dog cowering in a shelter kennel. She'd understood it every night she positioned herself between Ellen and the world. And she'd understood it the moment that intruder raised his weapon. Love had given her no choice, and she hadn't hesitated. I walked down the hallway and stopped outside Ellen's room. The door was cracked open, and in the dim glow of the nightlight, I could see them both sleeping, my daughter and the dog who'd traded her own life to keep her safe. Lois's ear twitched. One dark eye opened and found me in the doorway. I nodded once. "Thank you." She closed her eye and settled deeper into the cushion, her breathing slow and even. In the morning, we'd wake up and the world would still be complicated. There would be follow-up vet appointments and legal paperwork and letters from strangers who wanted to hear Lois's story again and again. But tonight, the house was quiet. The door was locked, and the dog who'd saved us all was finally, truly home. Outside, a car drove slowly past our house, too slowly. Its headlights swept across the living room wall before continuing down the street. Probably nothing. But in Ellen's room, Lois's head lifted. Her ears went forward, and she was already standing before the sound faded into the night. Some instincts, I realized, never sleep, and some guardians never stop watching.